First, I just want to welcome everybody to the ICM and auto verification using modeFRONTIER webinar. I'm Karen, if I've not spoken to you before, and I'll be assisting with the webinar today. So it's great to see some familiar names already logging in to join us. And before we get started, just some quick housekeeping. So for the efficiency of the webinar, as has been said, the audio lines have been muted. If you are experiencing any problems, there is a hand icon. So just put your hand up for if you need any help, and I'll try and assist where I can. There will be a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, but if you've got any questions in between, please feel free to use the question box. There's also a chat box as well if you need to ask me anything, or if you've got any feedback to give us, we would appreciate that as well. So, like I said, we've got Bipin Patel, who is the MD of EngineSoft UK, and I've got our AI and optimization expert, John Barnes, with us today. He'll be taking us through the presentation.
Great. Okay, so welcome everyone, as Karen said. It's great to have so many friends and colleagues that we've been dealing with over the last few years, and some new faces as well, or new names. Not so many faces, but some new names. So that's really good to see. I think many of you will have heard us talking about this, but we've developed quite a bit over the last few years, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to share that with you. So just to give you a running order, we're going to just talk a little bit about the backdrop, because you're all familiar with that, but it'd be interesting to get your feedback on some of those directives, what the challenges are that many of you are facing. Then John will give you a demonstration of the smart verification process using modeFRONTIER and ICM, integrating with ICM. We'll talk a little bit about the benefits, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are in terms of how you might get your hands on the tool if you haven't already used it. I think many of you have used it maybe in the past, but we are constantly developing the interface and the user friendliness of it. So I would strongly recommend that you perhaps take another look, because the time might be better. And we will be having some interaction, so no sneaking off for a walk or taking your budgie out or whatever you do when you're on webinars. We all do it. So anyway, but hopefully we'll keep you engaged with our quips and interesting talk. So let's move on. So what's driving, what's Ofwat looking for in water companies and the consultancies that are working on behalf of these water companies? Well, if you read the Driving Innovation white paper that they have produced, you can see that there's not. Previously, there was an emphasis just the word innovation is used, but now they're really emphasising that it's not just a nice to have, and that you just carry on sort of tinkering around innovation, but it's actually wanting people to really focus on the culture of innovation. So they want to focus on these 4 themes for resilience, customer service, affordability and vulnerability, and innovation. But the innovation is a critical enabler to the other themes, and it does mean real innovation, and they really emphasize this, and not just more smart monitors and flow monitors, and tick a box to say we're innovating now because we've got a smart flow monitor, a smart that's sending out some data analytics. So they really wish to drive the culture of innovation to everything your organization does, and we feel we've been working alongside you to enable you to do that and help you do that. And this is just one way, obviously, of how that can be demonstrated. So I'm not sure what your organization plans to meet the Ofwat, what they're planning to in order to meet the challenges of Ofwat, but they really do feel that without innovating, then the industry cannot deliver on what matters to the customers. So I think it's a very exciting time. I think certainly I think over the last 12 to 18 months, we've seen a marked change in that culture and a real drive. And I think it's because it's because of Ofwat, I'm coming down from the top down now to perhaps to incorporate culture. So we're seeing a huge number of inquiries in the last 6 to 12 months, and a lot of clients are coming on board. So it's a very exciting time for us. Hence the reason for the timing of this webinar. Okay. So just a little bit of mention. As you know, I know a young chap that you might know called Vish, and some of us, we're often having beers on the beach, chatting about things. And this whole idea came as a result of one of those conversations. And then when we started working with WAPOG in the early days, there was a bipolar of views, which was interesting for us because it wasn't kind of mute. And we set up a steering group with a few people that you could call visionaries, but I think as I say, that I think they were just nice people, and I really do want to thank them because the work that's gone into this interface has involved these people, and so John and I haven't been working on this blindly, so I just want to thank Phil Dyke, Ian Small, Boyd Miller, Dave Serby, Alan Wishdish, and Andrew Walker, who have all been very supportive in helping us develop this technology. And as a result of working with Innovise, we were kind of instigators in some way to the exchange, which allows now the further automation and integration. So these are, and some of these people are early adopters, obviously, of the technology. So it's a very exciting time, and some of them are on the webinar today. So thank you to you guys. Okay, so Karen, perhaps we could, I said we were going to try and keep you engaged and have some interactivity, so perhaps we could run the first poll.
Absolutely. So the poll should appear on your screen now. So we would be interested to note whether you've previously explored any automated verification before. So the options are never, previously explored with scripts, previously explored with modeFRONTIER, or any other optimization software. So I'll give you a few minutes to have a look. Good to see everybody are paying attention here.
Oh, good.
All right, so a few more seconds before I close the poll. Excellent. So I'll share the results on the screen now. So it's pretty interesting that neck and neck with scripts and modeFRONTIER.
Oh, super.
And 25% of you have never explored any.
Okay, great. Well, that's really interesting. Thank you for your contribution. It's all adds to the experience, and hopefully useful for all of you as well. Okay, so let me swiftly move on. So let's just talk about your organisations and the competitive environment that you, some of you, no doubt face. And we really feel that if we look at just today's technology and incrementally improve that, then it probably will be insufficient for tomorrow's requirements. And so you do need to think a little bit strategically and require a corporate vision, and some of you are probably party to helping your organizations develop that. And we certainly see now many organizations that we're talking to are including some form of automation and integration as part of their corporate strategy. Certainly in other industries that's been happening for many years, and some of you work in other sectors where you probably are more prominent, and now certainly in the water industry that's happening. So operational efficiency is also key, and our software is used, probably modeFRONTIER is used in 200 Fortune 500 companies and over 300 of the top organizations in the world. So it's not something that is a good idea. It's actually every aspect of your life is probably touched by something that some form of optimization, if not modeFRONTIER, has been affected by, from your coffee in the morning to your car to flights to any transport, bikes, you name it. F1 racing, modeFRONTIER is utilised to increase efficiency, whatever that is, in your sector. And in manufacturing, it's largely down to mass and how to reduce that. So we feel that you can gain a competitive advantage, and I think the inverse of that is even more worrying. If for whatever reason you are not moving forward with innovation and technology, then we see many businesses who get left behind and are no longer even around, and then it's too late. So we it's without scaremongering. I'm just obviously saying the obvious. So in terms of looking at it in terms of verification, we have a very simple way of gaining competitive advantage. You have a number of flow monitors that you're trying to verify. You have a baseline. You have a target, and if you do them as sequentially and individually, you might improve one at the detriment of another. And what we hopefully want to do is try and improve all of them in a systematic way. And that's what multi-objective design optimization helps you do, rather than approaching things in a sequential manner. So if you approach things, if you look at the width of those two red lines as the total cost, then verifying in a sequential manner will cost more in terms of time and obviously therefore money. Verifying with an automated integrated manner, you will look at all flow monitors together and sweep forward all of them and improve all of them in a balanced way. And that makes it much more sorry, my mouse keeps disappearing. That makes it much more cost effective, and as you'll see later, it gives you more data and more information. So that's what we're trying to do in a simple way, is try to look at your problem as a whole and improve the whole the objectives of the whole problem. So if we're verifying, we're trying to match curves, then rather than doing them sequentially, we're hoping to do them in a parallel manner. So you end up getting to the same point, but in a quicker way and a more cost-effective way. So in terms of cultural change and the rewards, verification, we're going to show you how you can save up to 50% time, but we know from the Ofwat directives that if you can save 20%, then they're going to be very happy. So but we feel it's much more significant than that in terms of verification. And improve accuracy by up to 10, between 5 and 12%. So not only are you saving time, you can get better quality output, a more consistent output. There are other uses of modeFRONTIER for optioneering, and we're seeing a lot of inquiries and case studies that we're doing for DWMP scheme developments. And as you know, we have our own tool called Strategic Giant for Growth. We're not going to talk about them today. We're going to focus on verification, but we will be having further webinars to discuss those. Okay, so that leads us on to our next poll. Karen?
Brilliant. Hold on a moment. You should see it on your screen now. So what is the biggest challenge with verification? Is it the time taken to complete a satisfactory quality, inconsistency of quality between different personnel, the lack of trained personnel, or the time taken to gain sufficient experience? So again, I'll give you a few minutes to answer that. Everyone's still awake and paying attention to you, Pip?
Who knows? I think they pay attention when you speak. So that's all that matters. And when John speaks. I'm just a big segue in the middle.
Right, so results are just coming through now. Just a few more seconds and then I'll close the poll. Brilliant, I think everyone's answered. So this is interesting. The time taken to complete a satisfactory quality, 69%.
Wow.
And insufficient experience at 56.
Super. Okay, well, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. What I'm going to do now is move on. We can certainly have time to discuss those results towards the end, I presume, Karen, in the Q&A.
Yes.
I think we're running to time. So what I'd like to do before John does his demonstration is to really talk about the business case, because this isn't a tool that is a nice to have and for the engineers to tinker with because they want a new toy to play with. We've worked very hard over the years to develop business cases for all our software. So we don't look at the cost. There is a cost, obviously, but we have to justify the expense to the FDs and the committee that signs off these things. And the only way to do it is to develop these business cases. So we look at quantifiable benefits all the time, and this is what we've tried to do here. So this is a case study, the typical case study that we might have done in the past, and it was 56 flow monitors with 10,000 nodes, and we're happy to do these for anybody that wants us to do them. So they're not. We don't charge for these. They take us a couple of days to do, as long as we've got all the information and we've got pro formas for all of these. And let's assume the manual method is half a day per flow monitor on average, 28 days. Now it may be a little bit less, it may be a little bit more, but it's just an average for the purpose of this exercise. And using our smart verification process, I think it took us, John, probably a day or two to set up and then another day or two to monitor and report out using modeFRONTIER. And in between there were some diagnostics which highlighted some model updates, so there was another couple of days. So all in all 6 days, and then 2 weeks of CPU time running. So obviously there's a cost for running CPU. You've got hardware and license cost. So these were the results. So what we found, we did it in 2 steps. We did 15 flow monitors first, and then the whole 56, just to make sure we understand what's going on. And you can do that with modeFRONTIER quite easily. And essentially, within we've got a breakdown there of the different amounts of time it took to do the dry day for 15 and 56 flow monitors, and for the storm, 56 monitors for the storm and dry day. So you can see that the split, obviously the biggest amount of time was for the storm verification of the full 56, 40% of the overall 4 days time in terms of setting up. But in terms of CPU, it obviously used most of the CPU for that. So we log everything in terms of how much physical man time we spend and how much CPU time we spend. So we have these for further inspection if that's something that you would like to talk about. But it's essentially, if we look at £500 a day. Now, some of you say that would be ridiculous. We charge a lot more than that, and some of you say no, we can't. We charge less. But you can add your own figure in. I think if we use the same figure for both parties, for the both parts, then it's consistent. So it's essentially 28 days at £500 a day, but the smart verification 4 days at £500 a day, but the 19 days or 2 weeks or whatever that was used for almost 3 weeks, sorry, on the CPU, a lower amount. So what we're doing is we're leveraging our knowledge and our skill to get the IT to work, rather than us sitting there every day running a run and looking at the results and then hoping that we can improve it by changing some parameters. The human mind can cope with 1 or 2 parameters, interactions and correlations, but can't do 20, 30, 40, 50. So this is the business case. Effectively, the cost without a smart verification process is around £14,000. Now, again, some of you will probably have to debate that, but I think the point is clear in that if you are trained in using this tool, which we'll talk about towards the end, and you can utilize it, then you can get a cost reduction of around 59%, but also an efficiency gain of 78%. So many of you have said on the poll that time is an issue. Well, immediately you can see that you could justify this software, and you could get an efficiency gain. And you may not be as wizzo as John, and often people might say, well, we have to learn this software. Well, absolutely, you have to learn it, but you have to learn it once, and then you get the gain forever. So our feeling is it's worth putting the effort in, and you'll get the gain. Yeah, no pain, no gain, as they say. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to say that. Anyway, moving on. So as you can see, we have a business case, so and that's clear, and you can justify that yourself by evaluating it. We'll talk about that towards the end. But what I'm going to do now is, I think I'm going to shut up now, and hand it over to John to just talk about this process that is developed that gives us that gain, and then we'll go into the demo. Okay, John.
Okay, so I'd just like to take some time just to explain the smart verification process. The core of that process is within modeFRONTIER, within a workflow that you'll see in a moment, and that is an automated process. There's, I suppose, a process of setting that up, and we've define these things really in four stages or steps of how you achieve one of these smart verifications. So if I just step through these four areas and just to highlight them, I mean the first step really parameterizing the ICM network we won't cover now, but it's quite a standard, straightforward thing. Typically that just means making sure that you have a valid flow survey, a valid run, a valid network, all inside an ICM database, and that some flags are set, and that might take a short amount of time, maybe a half an hour, an hour. And then what we're really talking about is really the next three steps. So the first thing is either to build a modeFRONTIER workflow or run from a template that you already have defined, and update that to the catchment that you're currently working upon. Then the next thing is to set some targets, set up and start looking at your observed data, and start going through each of the flow monitors and making sure that the whole modeFRONTIER process is set up to obtain the correct level of verification. And then really the fourth step is to then really click the go button and set modeFRONTIER off, and allow its smart algorithms to minimize the error between the simulation result and the observed data. So broadly, those are the four steps that we work through, and we'll just give a little bit more detail now.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. So what we're going to show you first is how easy it is now with the new integration interface, the API. We in modeFRONTIER talk call them nodes, and how easy it is to integrate modeFRONTIER to ICM. Okay, thank you, John.
I would just like to demonstrate now how easy it is to connect modeFRONTIER with InfoWorks ICM. To do this, all that we need is a node on the modeFRONTIER workflow. And as you can see here, this ICM node is now on version 5. We have developed this with the help of Innovise, and we have done this over the last 10 years. So it's now in a very stable and mature state. It is also based off the Ruby scripting and the Exchange environment that comes with ICM, but the user doesn't have to write any of that coding themselves. All of that is handled in the background. So what that leaves for the user is a very simple and straightforward process, of which, once we click into that ICM node, that there are only really 3 parameters that the user has to set as a basic starting point. So the first thing is just a path to the Exchange executable. The second is a path to the database, whether that's a standalone database or whether that's a working group database. And the third is a programmatic path to where the run is inside that database. And once you've done those 3 things, then modeFRONTIER is able to connect into that run. Because we're interested in smart verification, there's one additional parameter, which is a connection into a file that lists all of the targets and for each of the flow monitors, and how we want to set all of those up. But once I've got those 4 things, all I need to do is click on the parameter chooser, and modeFRONTIER will go away and it will automatically find all the parameters inside the network that it can modify and read. So the way that it presents that to us is just as a list of inputs and a list of outputs, and the user can then start selecting what they want to connect into. So in this case, we have a list of flow monitors that we want to connect into, and inside here I can select all of the subcatchments for all of the flow monitors. So in this case, I click on the population because I want to control the population for each flow monitor and all the subcatchments associated to each flow monitor. So in this case, I have flow monitor 1, 2, 3, and 4, one additional bifurcation point, and I'm going to be able to scale all of those subcatchments accordingly. And if I want to do base flow as well, then all I have to do is drag them from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And the same for the outputs. I just go into my flow monitors. In this case, because in verification, we typically want to minimize the error between the observed and the simulation data, then we can just select the error values, and we can drag that out into the modeFRONTIER environment. And once you do that and click OK and click OK, modeFRONTIER has already automatically built the workflow for you, and there's only a couple of things you really need to do to then go and run an optimization to minimize that error. So the first thing to complete this workflow is just to apply a target to the output. So in this case, I want to minimize the error, and I connect that into my output. And for each of the outputs, I've got a number of outputs. All that I have to do is say that I want to minimize the error to 0. So I punch that in and set that for all of my outputs, make all the errors 0. I can set up my inputs. So if I want to scale my population, I can scale my population between particular bounds. So in this case, I could allow it to scale the population between 80% and 120%, let's say, and I can set that for each of the flow monitors, and I can do that for the population and for the base flow. And once that's set up, I just need to select a strategy for running. Everything is set up, ready to run, and I click my run button, and I can then run my optimization.
Great. So as you can see there, a simple demo to show you how user-friendly that new interface is, and we urge you to try it out whenever you can. The other important thing to mention there is that you're in control of what the workflow is doing. So if you don't want it to change a parameter, or you only want to change it by a certain amount, that is completely within your remit, and you will have your own internal guidelines as to what those parameter values should be. Okay, good. So what we're going to show you next is to actually set up those targets. Again, we've got some user-friendly screens to help you do that. And John will explain how that's done next. Thank you.
So I would just like to demonstrate now, again, how easy it is to set up targets for each of the flow monitors. This is all handled with inside the modeFRONTIER environment, so there's no need to be copying and pasting data from ICM into modeFRONTIER. So it's a very auditable and trustworthy way of making sure that you've set targets correctly before you run your smart verification process. So here I'm just going to click into this ICM node, which opens up another window which gives us a verification tab that allows us to very easily set up our problem. In this case, what we can do is select the particular simulation inside the run. Maybe you've got multiple simulations for a particular run, and this can cope with setting multiple storms at the same time. We can select a flow survey with inside the database and match that flow survey against a simulation. And then we can see all of the flow monitors that are within that flow survey. And as we click between the flow monitors, we will be able to see the overlay of the observed data against the simulation data in a very similar way that you might be able to see inside InfoWorks. And what this allows us to do is to then set targets for each of the flow monitors. And we can do that from the left-hand panel for both flow and for depth data. And let's say we just wanted to set the target for the peak flow. We can click peak flow. And you'll see that we've got a marker here, and we can move that up and down to where we want our simulation data to match to. If we want to do that automatically, we can click the automatic button, or you can set things up manually on your own. And you can do that for each of the flow monitors as well. So in addition to peak flow, we can set night flow. We can set the volume under the curve. We can set the peak count, so we can count the number of peaks that there are inside the observed data and match to that as well. That's especially powerful when you're looking at pumping scenarios and you want to match the number of peaks. There's this perhaps unfamiliar target which is called a YFAC score, and this just scores the closeness of fit between the observed and simulation in terms of a percentage score, and that does that over the full duration of time or within a time window, and typically that's just looking at the area difference between the two curves. There's also this NSEC, which is the Nash-Sutcliffe efficiency coefficient, and you could try and maximize that to the value of 1, where 1 is a perfect fit, or you could just extract that out into some of your reporting documents and automatically document the quality of your verification. So we can do that as well. So it's hugely powerful and very, very simple to set up. There is also some information regarding volume balance, and we can see here a schematic, a very simple schematic of the network and how flow is being passed both in terms of the observed and the simulation data, and how it's flowing down to the outfall. And if there's any issues regarding the flow balance, we'll get some warnings, some amber and some red indicators showing that there isn't a balance perhaps within the observed data.
Okay, great. So you can see we spent quite a lot of time and thought into setting up the targets. Some of the quality scoring metrics, NSEC you'll be familiar with because that's from the water sector, but we've also brought in knowledge from other sectors, and John and I used to work in crash testing and safety system developments, as you might know, and so the YFAC score is the metric that was used to validate crash test dummies to simulation dummies. And then, as you can imagine, it is absolutely vital that those behave in the same way, because all crash simulation safety systems are developed using simulation and certified using simulation often. So and if the car doesn't meet its requirements, you don't get to sell the car. So it's absolutely vital that these correlations of these two, physical and simulation, are correct. So we've brought some quality metrics in there, and often this is the stage where modelers offer the most resistance, I feel, because they feel it a bit laborious having to set all this up. And I think it's really down to the managers to enforce some discipline to actually say, okay, this has got to be done. We've got to work in a different way. Otherwise, we're going to take 28 days instead of 4 days. So even if it takes a day to do this, it needs to be done. And to sort of let people off the hook to say, oh, I don't fancy doing it. I think in my mind, in this day and age, if you're driving for innovation and cultural change, this is where it has to be enforced. Discipline, because it's objective. It's not a gut feel that, oh, I think that model is verified. You, as managers, as a team, set these objectives and targets. Targets objectively, and let the model and the algorithm work out how to achieve it. And I think it's absolutely crucial at this stage to enforce the discipline to get the benefit. And if you can if you want to avoid that section, then you carry on simulating because you want to simulate quickly and look at the result quickly. But you could spend 28 days doing that. So it's a choice that you have to make, I think. And I can't really understand personally why it's not enforced if you find a smarter way, but there you go. I think things are slowly changing, so that's good. So what we're going to show next is how powerful automation is and the benefits of that. So I'll hand it back to John. Thank you.
So what I would like to share with you now is really the power of automation with modeFRONTIER. We've already shown you integration and how we can do that on the workflow, and we've got our workflow set up, and I've also specified a smart algorithm to run our process, and that's a straightforward thing to do. There's always a standard algorithm that we use for verification, and we've selected it here, and that doesn't take 2 seconds to set up. And once we're ready, we can click the run button, and we can start the process of running our automatic smart verification. And I don't have time to explain, but there's a whole world of widgets and gadgets and ways in which you can monitor simulations. So it started with simulation ID 3 and it's now running that simulation. And there are ways in which we can drill all the way down into seeing what's happening inside ICM Exchange, and we can get all of the results coming back saying what's happening to the network, that networks are being created, committed and validated and simulations run. But also we can see what's happening inside ICM. So if I go to ICM and I refresh the database, I should be able to see networks appearing and simulations appearing. There we are. We can start seeing that modeFRONTIER is now starting to run those processes. Now, one of the huge benefits is that modeFRONTIER can run one simulation or one design at a time, or it can run multiple simulations at a time. So we can really start managing the processes and the queues as we're automating inside modeFRONTIER. It's now running 4 at a time. It's already done the first 5, and then when we get to some outputs, we can start plotting a history of our data and plot the error value as those simulations are being run. You will also notice that as simulations are being created and generated here, the modeFRONTIER will automatically clean up after itself as well. So there we have simulations 16 to 19. As they finish off, modeFRONTIER will clean up after itself. So what you should see at the end is a chart something like this, where we can see that the error value is ever decreasing and getting closer and closer towards 0. And at some point we can stop the optimizer and check to see what this solution looks like. We can rerun this and save the design inside ICM. Now, once I do that, inside ICM, I can then go back and I can check and open up a custom graph, and then I look at my results, and then I can see how far it has progressed in matching each of those flow monitors.
Okay, great. Thank you. So there you get a little insight into how what's going on in the background once you set this running. So you can go on holiday, you can have a cup of tea, you can actually take your budgie for a walk while the modeFRONTIER is doing its thing, and it may go on for a day, it may go on for a few days, but at least you can be getting on with other tasks. So that's where the efficiency is really utilized. What's the word? Manifested. So, okay, so what we're going to show now is some benefits of the advanced diagnostics and some interesting things that come out when we're working on projects or case studies for clients, in that we discover things that maybe are missing in the model before they know, and we don't really, we're almost agnostic to it, but the data tells us there's something amiss. So John's just going to quickly show how you can use the tool for diagnostics.
So I'd just like to share with you a little bit about the diagnostic capabilities inside modeFRONTIER. I don't have enough time to go through all of the charts and all of the tools that we have available to look at all the statistical analyses and sensitivity analyses of modeFRONTIER, but just to give you two examples. The first example is really just the way in which you can use modeFRONTIER to actually find out where additional flow is required in a network and where things might be missing. So here's just a very simple example where you can see that the error value has been minimizing and has got down to a certain level, and we can see that that error is somewhat flatlining, and we're not able to push any further or any lower than those values. And if we get to that area, it can be really helpful to see, well, what's going on with the inputs. So we can plot, as I have here, some multi-history charts of all the base flow and population values that are being used. And one of the interesting things that we can note is that for this particular base flow, for this flow monitor here, is that it's reached up to this maximum threshold of 250. Now I know that the limit that we have given inside this model is actually 250. So what this is saying to me is that modeFRONTIER is really wanting to put more flow into that region, and it could well be that until we start allowing greater levels of base flow or population for this flow monitor, the whole system won't verify. Now, in the past, we've done this, and we've found that when we then go back to the site and we start doing the investigation, that there's a trade flow or a school or something that is missing from the network. So the second tool that I want to share with you is the sensitivity tool. And that really helps you understand, well, which input parameters are really affecting what output parameters. So in this case, if I go to my sensitivity tool, and I've already pre-trained this, it has only taken perhaps half a minute to train and to get to this state once I've ran the simulations. And I can rank all of my input variables to see how they contribute to the overall verification. So I can see that in terms of all the parameters that I'm changing, there's a particular additional foul flow that I've been varying. There are some population and base flow that I can start to see which inputs are contributing most to the validation error. Now, what that can mean is that it's far more important in our verification to concentrate on just tuning these particular variables. What we could do is filter out some of these variables. Now, what this is saying is that this additional foul flow is contributing about 28% to the problem, and this one here is contributing probably less than 1%. So we can just do some very basic filters and say that, I don't want to consider anything less than 1%. and then it will highlight for me which parameters that I should focus on tuning.
Okay, great. So some really invaluable tools there for, again, creating efficiency. What we found was that by running modeFRONTIER smart verification process very early on in the process of verifying a model, we were able to isolate issues in the model. So the model itself wasn't valid because there were some aspects of the model, some trade waste or commercial waste was missing, and so further site surveys or studies could be kicked off at an earlier stage, rather than maybe somebody spending a few weeks on it, or maybe somebody junior who's not so familiar with what could be the issue, spending a few days extra than required. So we found that was a great way of actually, managing the process by kicking off these further surveys that were required to update the model, but doing it at a much earlier stage in the process. Okay, so that's fantastic. So the last video now, the last demo is the how to use modeFRONTIER to standardize the processes and use it for an audit trail. So I think this governance will become more and more important, and having a standardized, auditable, traceable QA process is key, and that's how we work for most engineering clients. And so this shows you a little bit about how you can, John will show you a little bit how that can be achieved using modeFRONTIER for this.
So I'd just like to demonstrate to you now just how auditable the whole process of modeFRONTIER is. It's really there to standardize your whole process for doing verification. And the workflow itself becomes a template for all future work that you do. So in this example that you've got here in front of you, I'm just demonstrating how then the data that has come from ICM can then be passed into an Excel workbook. And just imagine that you have an Excel workbook that logs all of the report data that you have for a particular verification, and we can get modeFRONTIER to automatically at every design update that Excel spreadsheet. So just as a demonstration, you can see that I've got some outputs coming from ICM for all of the values that I can measure, whether that's night flow, peak flow, volume, all different aspects of the verification. I can pass into Excel. And if I was to go into Excel and open up my workbook, you'll now be able to see that you can populate that spreadsheet from the modeFRONTIER workflow, and you'll be able to store in any one of the cells either the night flow, the peak flow, or the volume. And modeFRONTIER works seamlessly with Excel. Now, once you have your process and you've connected everything in the way that you want, we can also then save this as a template for use for yourself, use for any of your colleagues. And that's just a simple case that when you come to save any one of the templates that you have or files that you have, you can save that as a template. And if I was to do that and save that, click save. And what that will mean is that when anybody else comes in and opens up their modeFRONTIER workflow, they'll always get the option of opening up that demo verification, and that can be shared across your team, to anybody that has access to that location. And even on the modeFRONTIER workflow, as an option, rather than just dragging in a particular node onto the workflow, we can also drag templates as well. So I can quickly create a new project and drag on a new template, and somebody else can get going with a new catchment that they want to verify.
Okay, super. So give that hopefully gives you a little bit about what can be done in the longer term, and we help our clients develop a strategy. So we can implement some of these more broader aspects into their kind of innovation plan, so to speak. So that leads us, hopefully my screen is showing. And just to summarize some of the benefits. So I think we've got a dedicated go-to algorithm that's very crucial, because without going into too much about algorithms and their sort of nuances, if you don't have the right algorithm, then it's very difficult to do verification, because it's a very specific beast when it comes to optimization. So we have a algorithm that allows you to do that, and you can then set up templates that can be reused. They can be used for training. So to give you a very simple example, one of our clients, this is a published paper, so I can speak about it, Cummins diesel engines. We're taking 8 weeks to do a verification for an engine. That's a 1D hydraulics model. Very similar to ICM, but a different package. And they were finding that each person that was doing it around the world turned out to be different quality, depending on who did it and how much experience they had. They implemented this process strategically worldwide, using this algorithm and this very same process, connecting to their hydraulics package. And they were able to bring that down to a matter of 2 days. And they found that whoever did the project, because the workflows were set up by experienced modelers and some guidelines given and some restrictions as to what they could change and what they couldn't, they could send it anywhere in the world and were able to find that they could achieve the same quality, about 90% consistency in their quality of output within 2 to 3 days. So that gives you some idea of the massive organizational benefit. You guys are doing this work day in, day out. So if you added up the cost, even taking into account the cost of the software, you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of saving. It's non-scripted, which is very crucial, and we've got this a fantastic user interface to set up the targets, very customizable depending on your organization. You can match multiple targets, so you can manage complexity, whatever it is, and increase accuracy based on the aspects that you can control. I'm rushing a little bit, but we can. You'll get the video, obviously, so we can move on to the final poll, I think.
Yep, so we'll just run the final poll very quickly, and then we'll go straight to some Q&A. It should appear on your screen now. So we're just having just a quick poll just to understand what your key company drivers are, whether it's to introduce state-of-the-art technology to satisfy any Ofwat directives, improve productivity for verification, introduce new innovation or working smarter, or to develop templates and clearer workflows. So just a few more seconds before we close this poll. Okay, so let's have a look. So improvements for productivity verification and introduce innovation and to work smarter comes out very clearly here.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Okay, well, we've got 5 minutes left, so perhaps we can just go to a quick couple of Q&As. John, do you want to deal with those?
Well, yes. I mean, we've just had some questions come through, so maybe if I just read them out. So as ever, questions you have to read it into them a little bit, but maybe based upon the subjectivity of verification and how to do that in, I suppose, an objective way using modeFRONTIER. So really, the first question is how does it handle or understand poor flow survey data? So the answer to that first question is really that power is in the hands of the user. It's to do with the way in which you set it up. So modeFRONTIER is not a black box. It's an engineering tool, and it allows and helps you make those decisions. So you don't have to match to every flow survey. You can match to just time windows where perhaps flow monitors are only accurate in a particular area, or you can switch that flow monitor off. So we have all the power to be able to deal with poor flow survey data, but that's typically a setup thing rather than modeFRONTIER itself just going off and doing its own thing. The second question was really, how does it handle the available runoff areas? So modeFRONTIER can control all of the runoff areas. I think underlying this question is probably, does modeFRONTIER just pump a whole load of area into one of the runoff areas? So I think the answer here is that this is fully in your control. If you only want to allow an additional 5%, 10% area on roofs or drives or something like that, you can limit modeFRONTIER to do that, and modeFRONTIER will obey those rules. If you wanted to give modeFRONTIER the full range and see what happens if you were to allow additional area above and beyond what your guidelines say, then you can do that as well, and that can also be equally useful as a diagnostic tool. I don't know if there's any other questions that you've got, Karen?
So, John, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so I think we'll have to take the other questions offline and get back to all the individuals that have asked questions on this occasion. If you just want to finish off?
Yeah, so thank you everybody for your time. I know it's valuable, so very much appreciated. We've got the next steps are subject to qualification, which is just a brief questionnaire that we'd like you to complete. We can provide some access to some free online training that takes you through a step-by-step process along with a free modeFRONTIER evaluation license. So obviously you would require ICM, which you have, and Exchange, which is obviously key, and we can test out your IT. Should be fine. Most systems work. So if you've got any further inquiries, email myself or Karen. We'll have this recording available. But thank you for now. We're very much appreciated, and hope that you found this webinar valuable and that you'll join us for future ones. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody. I look forward to catching up with everybody soon.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.